Now on Sportsday, full-on footy analysis with champion darters Daniel Hoyne.
Well, he's in the studio again. He's got his chest pumped out, but on the back of tipping Geelong to go down, I think he's thinking he needs a medal, Kane. He probably should get one. He also said,
you're only as good as you next week.
That's
Gerard.
right. He shouldn't get ahead of himself. He did give us Jai Caldwell, the impact on the scoreboard. He continues to gloat about Eric Hipwood and suggesting he should be an intercepting defender. And Steele Sidebottom was another one of his early ones, saying at the moment he's the number one winger in the competition. I'll be interested to know who number two is. Hoyney, welcome to you.
Gerard, Kane,
you had a good week.
Here. Just hope you keep record of the things that I also get wrong too along the way. But that's all right. We'll just turn those to the side and just keep on going down the positive road.
Clearly, you weren't concerned. You weren't surprised about Geelong.
No, and sort of what we were, sort of talking about last week is, the stuff that we look at and how we analyse it just, either alerts us to red flags or green flags, if you like. And sometimes, I'm pretty big on that it's more how you play, not the actual wins and losses. Yep. And I believe that, how you play will eventually, net you those wins or losses down the track, whether or not you're playing good footy but not actually getting the wins, they will come. Or, vice versa. If you're actually getting the wins, but your profile isn't as strong as what it actually needs to be, eventually that will actually level itself up. So no, I wasn't actually surprised at all.
Your biggest badge of honour on that, I think, was 2 years ago when Melbourne were going quite well, but losing the odd game, and then everyone was talking about you can't trust them, but you kept on saying the numbers are showing that this mob are playing premiership football, and you were rock solid, and the trust all of a sudden turned into a premiership, and that was one of your finer moments.
Yeah, I mean that's what we do. We come at it from a different lens, and sometimes people might not agree with it, and that's fine as well. But we trust the data, and probably roughly 80-90% of the time it actually eventually plays out that way. But it happened to be the case for Geelong on the weekend.
Okay, so we'll run through the same way that we did last week, and this week we do promise if you text in and give us a question, Hoyne will answer them before he disappears around 7 o'clock. 7 main talking points. We've got St Kilda's ball movement, Melbourne's offence, Adelaide's offence, Sydney's watch, Adam Sard, Brisbane's small forwards, Fremantle's change. But before that, the overall observations from the weekend.
Yeah, I thought that we'll take this part down the player path, and in particular, just having a look at the positional changes across the competition that have worked so far in 2023, and the positional changes that haven't worked so far in 2023.
So why don't we start on a positive?
Yeah, we'll start on the positive, and the biggest positional change in terms of their increase in AFL player rating points from their original position of 2022 to their current position of 2023, and the biggest change so far has been Will Setterfield. So he's his change has been significant, moving from a wing at Carlton to playing centre bounce midfield time now at Essendon. And so far his season is probably a little bit unexpected, I would have thought. Even from those at Essendon so far in terms of what he's been able to do. And I think probably the part of his game that's actually unexpected is the fact that he's been involved in 9 scores per week. So if that continues across a whole season, that's up there with some of the best years that we've seen from a midfielder. So if you're
Adrian Dodoro will be smiling.
Yeah, so if you're looking at Bontempelli and Petrarca and these guys, who are constantly high up for score involvements, they're averaging around about 8 per game. So for Setterfield to be averaging 9 per game is pretty extraordinary.
Hoyne, I suspect it's much more difficult to work out where players are playing these days than it used to be maybe even 5 years ago. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, 100%, Kane. So that's probably where we've sort of, that's probably our challenge at the moment. And what we're tending to do in terms of analysing player performance by position is actually looking at their numbers per 100 minutes in each position to actually give us a bit more of a an accurate guide, if you like, because as you say, there's so many players that now play dual position, so to actually categorise them purely by one position, at times can be a little bit misleading.
Will Setterfield's number 1, number 2.
So Josh Vachali's move into being a mid forward now.
Yep.
So he was just a permanent small forward last year, which you can understand. But now he's gone into that mid forward role. 18 disposals and 2 goals a game is elite numbers for that type of role.
I was disappointed that Shuey was hamstringed off because his change of role, more defence then forward has really been a bonus, and he was nearly best on ground when he got injured on the weekend.
Yeah, he was. He was enormous, wasn't he?
So when you talk about Rochelle, this is why I was questioning the move of Rayner, Hoyney, to back. And there was counter views on that, and a lot of people saying, well, Brisbane have got a number of forwards, let's try him in a different role. But is he not Josh Rochelle, but only a couple of years older?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's got the pace or the agility of what Rochelle does, but if you look across the whole competition and, over the last couple of years or so, everyone's, all the best teams have had that mid-forward type that can go into the centre bounce and be energetic. And we've seen, we saw Papley last year towards the end of the year really start to, sort of turn Sydney's clearance game around. We've seen Dusty, we've seen Dangerfield, we've seen Bontempelli, we've seen Petrarca, we've seen these guys. And I think for Brisbane to be able to find who that player is, whether it's a Zach Bailey, for instance, to be able to spend more time actually through the centre bounce than what he's actually doing now could be an option for him.
Certainly he's had a couple of quiet weeks, Zach Bailey. Kane, I hope you're right about the young bloke playing on the half-back flank, but I just haven't seen him get enough possession when he has been playing in that role. So that's his challenge. I mean, when he gets it, he's terrific, and he's ballistic, and he's hard at it, wins the ball. But it's a numbers game as much as anything, and its impact with the numbers. Anybody that's else on the positive before we swing negative?
Yeah, so 3 more. So Errol Gulden moving from a mid-forward into a permanent centre-bounce midfielder has been fantastic so far, and I'll get onto him later on the show. Jaden Hunt has been a fantastic acquisition for West Coast as a free agent, moving from a half-back flank to a wing. And then the other one is Ryan Burns. So a little bit of an unknown product for St Kilda, but he fits the Ross Lyon mantra perfectly, just with his running ability to be able to move onto the wing as opposed to what he was doing last year under Brett Ratton has been absolutely fantastic for them.
Okay, we're going to those that didn't work or haven't worked.
So far, 3 games into the season, So Harry Himmelberg gets thrown down back in the second half of last year and was flying to end the season. So far this year, he's only been involved in 11 scores over 3 weeks as a key forward.
Doesn't surprise.
So really struggling. Ben Keys.
Centre half back for mine, Harry.
Yeah, so Ben Keys been moved from a midfielder into that general forward role. And I'm not sure what you think, Kane, on this as well, but it's just his ball use at the moment which is killing him.
He might be out of the side. There'll be others that go past him, I think. And we've seen Pedler play the similar role, but has been more effective at doing it. So Ben Keys, you got to admire him, don't you? I mean,
he tries.
Salvaged a career out of, with some significant deficiencies, and he did a great job on Sard last year and kicked 4, I think, on him, and actually had a solid pre-season. But
needs another one of those kills to get himself back on track.
To Hoyney's point, if you're missing targets inside 50, which is the most difficult kick in footy, and you're not impacting on the scoreboard with your accuracy, then you're at risk of being out of the side.
He looked to me as if he was under pressure in his own head last weekend when he didn't handball one over the top and he went for the Hail Mary shot at goal, which to me suggests he feels like he's got to kick a goal to justify his spot rather than giving the normal handball, which he normally gets. Moving on.
Yeah, so just a couple more to finish off. So Mark Blitzarves this year is actually spending less time as a ruckman. So last year he spent about 60-40 as 40% ruck time last year. This year it's 30% ruck time. So he's getting used more on the wings and in the centre bounce more than what he was actually doing last year. So last year it was as I said, it was 40% ruck time.
Yep.
This year 30% ruck time. So that one's just an interesting watch as well. Heppel getting moved from the halfback flank to the wing. Unfortunately for Dyson, hasn't worked so far this year, only averaging about 15, 16 disposals, and his ball use has really hurt him. And then just two more just to finish off. So Zach Bailey, his game on the weekend against the Dogs in particular was poor. I mean, that was his 5th lowest rated game across his season. But he's gone, as I said before, he's gone from that mid-forward role to just playing permanent
so Dunkley
general
cost
forward
him.
minutes. Yeah, so I think they need to look at doing something with Zach to actually getting going a little bit more through the midfield. And then just the last one is Tim Taranto. So Tim Taranto is a watch. I know that there's a lot of hype around Tim Taranto at the moment. With him coming across to Richmond, but he was playing as that mid forward type role at GWS. Now he's playing permanent midfield minutes. I understand that he's going to take a little bit of time to understand the Richmond system so far, but he's struggling to have impact with ball in hand. So there's no problem with him winning it, but it's what he's doing with it which is causing concern at the moment.
Yeah, most ineffective kicks in the competition through 3 rounds. I think that is the case, and 0 goals for Hoyney. So and looks all at sea with his confidence and his ball. He's got to be more creative. It can't just be grab it from a stoppage and hack it forward. He's got time and space to be a bit more creative with the ball. What were your 7 main talking points over the weekend? We'll start with the Saints.
Yeah, so just really interested in terms of what Ross and St Kilda are doing from a ball movement perspective at the moment. So there's no one that's playing the ball movement game better than what St Kilda are at the moment. So their ability to be able to move the ball from one end of the ground to the other at the moment is the best that we've seen by any team since 2009. So that's going back to Geelong of 2009, which is 14 years ago. So, and it's how they're actually doing it. So they're using the boundary more than any other team in the competition at the moment. And if it keeps going this way, it will be the highest boundary use that we've ever seen by anyone in any season as well. So were
you doing the numbers when Mick Malthouse was coaching the Pies to premiership? So more than that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So more than Collingwood in 2010 and 2011 when they had that successful 2-year period. So it's interesting how they're doing it with ball in hand. So they're pretty short in terms of what they're doing, but it's still trying to go towards goal, and it's still just slowly just building your way up and just getting more territory towards goal and what have you, and then being able to utilise their runners to be able to create the space to be able to find uncontested marks and actually slowly build the ball towards goal. And I'm interested in more in terms of the other way, in terms of how they're actually defending ball movement at the moment. So they are the 3rd best team in the competition at actually defending it, but they're not getting challenged going back the other way. And we talked about that with Essendon last week, whether or not Essendon were actually going to challenge St Kilda in terms of taking 80 to 90 marks, but actually charging at them and going forward and going long and going at speed and whatever. But we didn't see that, and that's not what Essendon sort of have been doing so far this season. So their ability to be able to stop the opposition, I mean, they're conceding the most marks in the competition, St Kilda, but they're conceding the fewest disposals fewest metres per disposal of any team in the competition. So they allow you to go nowhere. So they don't care if you're taking 400 disposals for the game and taking 120
Well, Fremantle's a classic example. They just kick the ball sideways.
So they've had 3 teams so far this year, St Kilda, Fremantle, the Dogs and Essendon, who haven't challenged them yet. They've got Gold Coast this week.
Yep.
But then the ultimate challenge comes in 2 weeks against Collingwood, where they will challenge them, and that will be interesting to see what actually happens there.
Okie doke. So we've ticked off on the Saints, and the ball movement is underpinning their great success. Melbourne's offence you'd like to have a look at?
Yeah, and I'd like to, both from a team and a player perspective, and their ability to be able to convert entries into goals this year is off the charts. They're number 1 in the competition this year at turning an entry into a goal. So best part of 1 in 3 entries are going into a goal. AFL average is 1 in 5 entries going into a goal. So put that into context, last year they were the 5th worst team in the competition at turning an entry into a goal. And Kane, I'm interested in your thoughts on this as well, just given what happened at trade period. So Lachie Hunter so far this year is rated as one of the best kicks going inside 50 in the competition. And to get him at the price that they did last off-season could turn out in 5 months, 6 months' time to be one of the most significant things that actually happened over Melbourne's off-season.
Well, Gerard opened the show with that. Players that have gone on to thrive at other clubs. It felt like he had come to the end of the runway at the Western Bulldogs and the opportunity was there. So there's not really any criticism towards the Dogs. I thought it was mutually beneficial for both club and player. But you're right. They're the highest scoring team in the comp through 3 rounds. And we always spoke about Hoyne, Melbourne's inefficiency going forward. That was their one weakness for a couple of years there in the lead up to the 2021 premiership. So, I mean, that's enormous efficiency. And just, I mean, Brodie Grundy's spoken about the care that they have for their goal kicking and how important that has been for them as well. Their accuracy.
Well, that's a chocoism, isn't it?
It's a massive choco one. So, I mean, we often, well, Jerry, you don't, but we often overlook just how important the accuracy is. You can do everything right and then miss, as a number of teams did on the weekend, but Melbourne are so effective.
Well, that would make total sense. I haven't heard Brody in those comments, but
he said he couldn't believe how seriously they take goal kicking and how it just felt like there's a really proper goal kicking program in place.
Wow. So
whereas other clubs might be a bit haphazard with it, they still have their shots and they take it seriously and all of that. But
there's a difference between practice and practice.
Yeah.
Well, they're going at 61% accuracy at the moment, which is by far and away the best in the competition. So
who's next best?
If you look at no, I haven't got that off the top of my head, and I don't want to make that up. We don't make up fake data here on G, but but 61% accuracy, across 3 weeks is.
You're suggesting some do make up the fake data?
But I'm not suggesting.
Without it, without it, you're just a flog with an opinion, as I've heard. Been loved so many times,
haven't you? But so no, they're off the charts at the moment. I don't think. I wouldn't expect them to be going at 61% accuracy across, the entire season. But just given what they're doing with ball in hand, more so going inside 50, and the other player there too is Kyle Chandler as well. So I know that there were a few clubs that were interested in him over the trade period. They didn't give him up, and now
they're playing him.
Yeah, no. And what about Adelaide? There's some questions whether they had the talent before the start of the year. What does their offense show you?
Well, I'm interested in your thoughts here again too, Kane. I mean, like Matty Nix and what he's been able to do this year, I would have thought, getting back to the accuracy component, as a coach, your job is to probably, create the opportunities, and whether or not your players can actually take the opportunities or not, well, that might not be up to you, so much. And Adelaide so far this year across 3 rounds have had the second most shots at goal of any team in the competition. They're turning every second entry into a score, which is at a ridiculous rate at the moment. But their accuracy the first 2 weeks against GWS and Richmond, certainly against GWS cost them, and then against Richmond it probably hindered them to some degree. But then they go out and they kick 18-8 or 18-9, whatever it was, on the weekend. But I just wanted to talk about what they're doing inside 50 at the moment from a contest perspective. So your ability to be able to win contest in the forward 50 area is going to generate enormous scoreboard return. And if you haven't got those players inside 50, no matter how many entries you're going to get, it's going to be hard to be able to generate some sort of return to them. Well, they're the second best team at winning contested possession inside forward 50. And you think about, that talent in there, and this is where, potentially, the acquisition of Isaac Rankin probably copped a little bit of heat, for giving up what they actually did for him. But I mean, this guy's a star. I mean, I always look at it. I'm not sure what you think, Kane. I always look at it. If he was available on the open market in the national draft this year, where would he go?
Well, this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to go inside a top five draft pick. So I'm all for taking the punt. It's returned so far this year, and hats off to what they're doing.
Do you have a question for Daniel Hoyne? Send it through on 0433 98 11 16. Now, back to full-on footy analysis with Hoyney, right here on Sportsday.
And we're up to number 4 of his 7 main talking points out of round 3. Sydney on the agenda. They've beaten Gold Coast, Hawthorn, and they lost to Melbourne by 50 points on Sunday at the MCG, Hoyney.
Yeah, I don't think that their loss was as bad as what the actual final margin suggested. I think the 50 points is probably a little bit out of context, because given how tight that game was for that 2.5 quarter period after Melbourne's burst. But it's just interesting looking at Sydney over the last 12 months, and given how effective they are at ball movement, and given how effective they are at actually defending ball movement and playing the turnover game. The contested possession side of things is where they just need to break even, just to be able to give themselves a chance to be able to excel at what they're actually dominant at, if you like. And I'm just having a look at a couple of players over the last 12 months whose contested possession numbers dropped significantly from wins to losses. And I think that's where it lies moving forward for the Swans. So if you look at Tom Hickey, I know he didn't play on the weekend, but grand final day last year he was poor. He averages 11 contested possessions in wins, 8 in losses. Callum Mills averages 10 in wins, 8 in losses. Rowbottom, 10 in wins, 7 in losses. Tom Papley, 8 in wins, 5 in losses. Dylan Stevens out on the wing. I know he's not a contested possession player, but averages 6 still in wins and averages only 3 in losses. That's the part of the game to me which is going to determine, for the rest of the year, whether or not Sydney can make a prelim, and win a flag, or whether or not they're just going to finish between that 5 to 8 bracket, be thereabouts, but actually not be able to challenge the best come the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a watch on the Swans and their contested ball movement. Adam Sard had a good start to the year.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like for a little while this guy's probably copped a fair bit of criticism given again what Carlton actually did at the trade table to get him.
Yep.
A couple of years ago they gave up a lot to get him, but as I said to you guys before, with the Isaac Rankin trade, I'm not fussed when clubs actually go hard to get someone, and you have to give up a lot to get them. They gave up pick 8, pick 9, whatever it was. Right now that's looking at cheap as chips, really. So Sard so far this year, he's by far and away the number 1 rated defender in the competition. What he's doing from a ball use perspective, if it wasn't for him, Carlton's ball movement would be even of more concern. So he's the 3rd best kick in the competition coming out of defensive 50 so far this year. So Carlton, I think Carlton are bottom 4, bottom 5 for being able to move the ball from one end of the ground to the other. If it's not for Adam Sard,
who is it?
Exactly. Who is it at the moment? And what he's been able to do, offensively, huge tick. But he's also played on Shai Bolton first game of the year and kept him quiet.
Did well.
Played on Tyson Stengel round 2, kept him quiet, and then played on Brent Daniels on the weekend. So he's one of those, and has been now for quite a while, that he is one of those rare defenders that gets given the difficult matchup more often than not.
Yep.
Is able to shut them down more often than not, but is then able to counter-attack and be able to provide such offensive use, going back the other way.
If you had to pick an All-Australian half-back in that role, you've got a few to choose from: Sinclair at St Kilda or Sard at Carlton, and some others, I suspect. Who would you have?
No, I'm going Adam Sard.
Adam Sard, number 1?
Hands down.
You might be able to have both. They might be able to have both, Gerard. They both made it, as you know, last year. So they're in pole position early days already. What about Brisbane? You've got a watch on them.
Yeah, I just want to just raise something a little bit different with the Lions, and I know that that there has been a lot of talk around their key forwards, and fair enough too.
Well, you started it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for them, they haven't turned their form around just yet. But I also just wanted to talk about their small forwards.
Yeah.
Inside the forward 50. So on the weekend against the Dogs. So in terms of ground ball differential inside their forward 50, they lost it by 18, Brisbane. So that's when the ball hits sort of comes off the pack, hits the ball on the ground, and the ball's up for grabs. They lost it
down
by
on
18.
numbers up there?
That's their worst differential, the Lions, since 2016. They won 3 forward 50 ground ball gets for the whole night. That's their lowest ever in any game.
Not much is working in their forward half.
So yes, the tools aren't working, and perhaps as a few have mentioned that perhaps that might be a bit of a flow-on effect to what the tools are actually doing, but what Charlie Cameron and Lincoln McCarthy are doing at the moment, in particular, they're really offering not too much, in terms of what they're able to do at ground level and what they're able to do on the scoreboard as well. So yes, the Keys have copped it this week, and as I said, I can understand why. But I think it's also having a look at what these smalls, are actually doing.
Do they need the big O to straighten them up?
Well, he's actually going okay at the moment from a ruck perspective. So whether or not they, sort of give more game time ahead of the ball to a Darcy Fort, perhaps, I'm not too sure. But something does need to change.
Big change at Fremantle, which was 3 weeks in the making.
Yeah, it was. So we had 2 weeks in a row of West Coast really changing what they did and getting on board with 2023 footy. And now we saw over the weekend, Fremantle getting on board with 2023 footy. So one thing in particular was just their ability to be able to move the ball with such aggression, move it forward, whether that be by hands or by foot. So on the weekend, they gained, close to 600 metres from their handballs. So to put that into context, Fremantle haven't done that for, best part of 13 years. So it was something of real significance. They played with more aggression. They only took 80 marks.
Well, Sarong and Switchkowski, I think, really helped. Switchkowski's move into the middle was a gem, and Sarong's game was a gem.
Yeah, no, it was.
Slow-mo Freo, no more, hopefully. Gerard, just a couple of quick questions off the Timber text before we get to those players that missed out on the love from the coaches. Question for Hoyney on Paddy Cripps. He's competition top 3 in contested possessions, total clearances and stoppage clearances. Is he on track for his best season yet? Asks Aaron.
Well, unfortunately, at the moment, with our rating system, we're measuring impact in terms of what you're actually doing from those possessions.
Hasn't kicked it great, has he?
No, he's been poor, and sort of his game on the weekend, in particular from a ball use perspective, really hurt him. I mean, that was, I know that the coaches gave him
10.
The full 10 votes, but we actually had that as the 7th lowest rated game of any player that's had 40 plus disposals on record
ever.
So that was it wasn't a highly rated game purely of what he did from a ball use perspective, and then as a result, and that's probably been a bit of a theme so far across his year so far. So he's only
so you haven't rated his year as far as the ratings are concerned.
No. So if he keeps going at this rate, it will be his lowest rated year since 2015. So I think we can get seduced purely just by the raw numbers a little bit, but it's more the impact that you're actually having from those possessions.
And that's the sort of stuff, Kane, that I suspect our texter who texted in would have been expecting the opposite answer to that, because the weighted numbers can sometimes blind you to the impact.
Yeah. And I think we all everyone gets access to the disposals and contested possessions and clearances, but I think there's a bit more to it.
Can I just ask you before you go on with who did they miss? And I think we just got our first one. The Bombers' defence. How's that tracking under the new coach?
We put it on watch a little while ago, and it's still of huge concern, really.
Is it?
I mean, so far this year they are the easiest team in the competition to move the ball against from one end.
So
of the
they're still
ground to the
18th.
other. So we're yet to see improvement in that. And they've played Hawthorn, they've played Gold Coast, and now they've played St Kilda as well. So
any more questions, Kane? I think we've just got a couple of good answers on those particular ones.
We do. Just quickly on someone's asking on things that you track. Jack Chris runs harder towards the end of games than at the start. I don't suspect there's any way of measuring that, though, Hoyney, players' effort and how much ground they cover.
Yeah, so the only way to measure it is through the GPS data that we actually receive from every club, but we're not allowed to actually sort of analyse that and actually sort of broadcast that information. That's strictly prohibited.
What about Mason Wood's games?
Yeah, so Mason Wood is the second highest rated wingman so far this year. Only still Sidebottom is going better than him at the moment. So that's been a fantastic return for St Kilda.
Okay, we move on to the most popular part of this particular hour, and that is who did the coaches miss?
I feel like this guy continues to
week
to get thrown up into this segment. But Scott Pendlebury is one. So he only got one vote on the weekend, but he was the third highest rated player on the ground, and it's been what Pendlebury has done throughout his career. He doesn't need to rack up massive disposals. He had 24, but he had nine score involvements, which was the second most on the ground as well. So it's just that ability to be able to turn possession into scores is something that he does almost better than anyone else in the competition.
You've mentioned Adam Sard. Did they miss him?
They have 0 votes on the weekend for Adam Sard, but we had him as the third highest rated player on the ground.
Come on, Vossi.
23 disposals, 11 intercepts, number one on the ground, and his ability to be able to use the ball, as I said before, is a significant weapon.
That's a big miss. Seb Ross.
We had him as the second highest rated player on the ground on the weekend. Again, only the 24 disposals, but it's what he's able to do with ball in hand this year, which has been really impressive. So he's able to gain territory towards goal. He's able to win the ball in a contest, and his pressure on the weekend, 9 tackles on the weekend. So it was a bit of a two-way sort of game.
What rating did you have his game at?
I think it was around about a 17 or 18.
Well, that's a good result.
So, yeah,
I'm
good game.
so happy to see this man on the rundown, because I did this game and I gave him votes, Hoyney, and then I checked the coaches' votes and he wasn't there, and I was like, what did I miss? So who did the coaches miss at Gold Coast?
That's why we've got you across, Kane. I'm going to get you a job full time now. So Nick Holman is one that we've got down here as well. So we had him as the second highest rated player for the game. 19 disposals, but again, like Seb Ross, it was what he's able to do on both sides of the ball. So he's able to be involved in 8 scores. So only the coaches was involved in more. But he was able to.
How many coaches votes?
0.
Oh,
But his pressure ahead of the ball. Yep. No one applied more pressure forward of centre than what Holman did for the game.
Just on Lukosius, I mean, we're not going to get too carried away because we've been crying out for this for a long time, and he needs to do it more consistently. But do you have the numbers on where that ranks in terms of a career best game for him?
Yeah, I think that was his third or fourth highest rated game across his career. But like as you said, Kane, like it's let's get a little bit more evidence first before we can sort of really jump to any conclusions.
Lockie Schultz is one of my favourite players for Freo, and I'd love to see him play in the middle of the ground a bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he was a catalyst in terms of being able to improve that ball use going inside 50 for Freo and be able to sort of really help on the back of their improved ball movement. So again, on the weekend, high return from his disposals that actually led to scores. So 19 disposals for 9 score involvements. Great return.
Any coaches' votes?
His ball use going inside 50 is superb. 0 coaches' votes.
Again. Could you see him playing out of the middle, just having a run like they've done with Switkowski?
I think they've got the ability to be able to rotate both.
Yep.
A little bit of what Adelaide are doing with Rochelle and Rankin. Probably Rankin less so, but I think they've got the ability to be able to do both.
Which brings us to that time again. It's Hoyney's horror and Hoyney's gem. Why don't we begin with your gem, Hoyney?
Yeah, so we'll start on the positive, and Kane, as you alluded to before, it's sort of it is getting harder and harder to be able to rate and sort of really assess players just by one position, if you like. So like as I said before, we're sort of breaking down what they're doing per 100 minutes in each position this year, and I just wanted to give a bit of love to start with. And sort of Errol Gulden this year is performing above expectation against his position, which is a midfielder, more than any other player in the competition. So to put that into context, he's averaging 21 AFL player rating points per 100 minutes as
21.
As a midfielder.
That's massive.
The AFL average is 11. So he's almost
21's Brownlow medal stuff.
So his output in terms of what he's doing in this new role, and I think his game. Again, on the weekend, it probably won't get the recognition that it deserves. We talk about Patrick Cripps before and answering that question. I can totally understand why 41 disposals or whatever it was. But Gulden only had the 15 disposals on the weekend, but it's all damage that actually comes from it. So I think he's one of those players at times that you're going to have to watch back on replay to actually really appreciate what he does. I mean, I use the Shane Edwards example for years. He was a player that you needed to watch on replay to actually really appreciate what he does. I think Errol at times actually sits in that position as well.
Okay, Hoyney, before we go to our callers, our texters, your horror for the weekend.
Yeah, so on the flip side to what we're looking at from Errol Gulden and in terms of his performance against all midfielders this year, I'm interested in Kane's thoughts here again. So, unfortunately, we've got Ollie Wines at the moment who's performing below expectation
for the year
for his position more than any other player in the competition so far this year. So, his ability, to be able to to be able to impact games at the moment is at a level that we haven't really seen from Ollie for quite a while, and it's probably understandable. On the back of Port Adelaide's sort of inconsistency from what the last 2 weeks have been minus 57 and minus 23, 24 incontested possessions in a 2-week period. So he's integral to that part of the game, and he just hasn't been able to get going so far this year for Port Adelaide. So just one to keep a watch.
Absolutely fair. He's a player that needs to train and had significant surgery. In fact, went in for knee surgery, I think, and they found a lot more damage than they had anticipated. So he hadn't done much of a pre-season. Not that that's any excuse, but with his build, he needs to train and he needs a pre-season. And I feel like he's suffering from not having that over the weekend. Righto, Gerard, we put the call out there for the text to come through. Let's work our way through a number of those. Hoyney, who should do the majority of the right work at Collingwood with their issues, do you think?
I'd probably just be putting it onto Dan McStay. I think what Collingwood do, a lot of it is off the back of great defence. So I wouldn't be looking at a Frampton or a Darcy Moore, but I'll be looking at more the front half of the ground, because scores will be able to come as a result of their strong defence.
I love this question from Ali. Please ask Hoyney about Liam Baker and his tackle pressure.
Yeah, so Liam Baker on the weekend, he was absolutely fantastic. He was the highest rated player on the ground against Collingwood on the weekend, and I think he was really integral, to be able to get Richmond back into the game in that second half from a contest, from a clearance, and from an intercept perspective.
Coaches rated him. He got 4 points, second highest behind DeGoey, who got the 10. Moving on, which Dacos polled the most on the weekend? Rated the most.
So on the weekend, I actually
Friday night.
I actually haven't got that for you, but across across the course of the season so far, they're both, pretty much rating on par with each other. So it's going to be interesting, sort of, come that All-Australian, time, whether or not Josh can get in on the wing and whether or not Nick gets in across that halfback role. But they're both going exceptionally well at the moment.
There's some interest in Tom Stewart. He got 0 votes. How did you rate him?
Yeah, so we had Stewart as the third highest rated player on the ground on the weekend. Clearly Geelong's highest rated player. So again, if I think it wasn't for him, they probably would have lost by a little bit more than what they actually did.
Who was the highest rated player in the showdown?
Isaac Rankin.
Yeah. And there's a watch here. Kane, your man, Braden Maynard, seems to be quieter than what he was this time last year. Hoyney will get us some numbers for that next week. Outstanding as always, mate. Thanks for your time.
No worries, guys. Pleasure as always.